Hello and welcome back, my friend. My name is Oindrila. I am a full-time PhD student in environmental engineering at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Last week, Jessica, who is also a PhD vlogger, organized a PhD support group with some of the science communicators and vloggers. The major thing that we were discussing about is how we organize our work and all the challenges that we face while doing so. For today's vlog, I decided to extrapolate that discussion and go into a little bit more detail about how I organize my work, the various platforms I use, the challenges I face, and my general thoughts about organizing work and life in general. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you're notified about future videos that come up here. And also check out Jessica's vlog. You'll find the link in the description below. She is a PhD student in chemistry at the University of Aberdeen, and her vlogs are very motivating. And with that, without further ado, let's get into the vlog. You can find more about my research and what are the topics of my research in episode number 1. So feel free to check that out. You'll find the link somewhere on the screen right now. But the experiments that I do can be broadly categorized into two main classes: the modeling experiments and lab-based experiments. In my modeling experiments, I basically explored the fundamental processes that make chemical contaminants move within an environmental medium like sediment or water, or across various environmental media. My lab experiments are mainly to validate my findings with the modeling experiments. I design experimental setups which help me study the degree of accuracy to which the real-time estimations or measurements are possible, and if there are any uncertainties that need to be accounted for. Given these experiments, the kind of files I deal with on a regular basis can be classified into 6 major types. I have clumped certain kinds of data together based on the kind of platform I use. So the first among them is research papers, ebooks, and lab protocols. So for this, I mainly use an open source software called Mendeley. Mendeley is a free reference managed software, and it can help you store, organize, take notes, share, and cite references. I will go over how I use Mendeley specifically for reading journals and papers in part 2, so stay tuned for that. The second category of data that I deal with is code. I do a lot of mass transfer modeling and my codes are written in MATLAB. So I have a lot of .m files which I usually store on the university Box drive. So Box has a very convenient feature called Box Sync, which lets you automatically sync across all your devices, including your desktop setups, laptop, iPad, or even your phone. And any changes that you make anywhere automatically gets updated in all of your devices. One of the things that I would recommend everybody doing is backing up your data. I cannot recommend enough the importance of backing up your data, and it's not enough to keep it on the internet. It's also important that you back up your data in an external hard drive like the one I have. This is I think a 1 TB. I think it's a 1 TB Toshiba hard drive that I have, and I think it's more than enough to store my research work. The third kind of files that I deal with are data tables and figures in the form of .xlx, .jpeg, or PNG files. And these include code-generated tables or generated after a lot of data crunching, the schematics of experimental setups, result plots, etc. So I use my Box Sync and my external hard drive to store these as well. Of course, I have designated folders for every project that I have. The fourth kind of data that I have are my logbooks, planners, notes. The platform that I use for that is Notion. If you're using it for your personal use, I think the app is free, which is the version I use. Of course, for starting off, I'm pretty new to Notion. I must say this, because I have always been trying to figure out the best way of organizing my notes. I have switched and played around with a couple of note-taking softwares that are out there. One of the major ones I used before this is OneNote. There are pros and cons to both, I would say, but Notion has a more structured layout, and it's very easy to have your own template to doing things. Unfortunately, for the kind of work that I do, where it involves taking a lot of handwritten notes for my experimental work, which is unfortunately not a feature that I can access in Notion. So for that, I use my iPad right here to take notes on Apple Notes, and then I sort of import that handwritten note into Notion under the folder that I want. I can give you a little brief description about how I use my Notion to organize my stuff, but I can do a more detailed video later on when I am more, more acquainted with the platform. I'm still a very, very young user of Notion, I guess. The fifth kind of data that I deal with on a day-to-day basis is instrument-specific method files and data files. So this is a very particular kind of data which is generated from the analytical devices that I use for my experiments. The method files and the data files that are generated from running my samples on these machines are usually stored in the computer that is associated with that machine, but I also make sure to back those up maybe once in a couple of months on my external hard drive, and then back them up on my box drive as well. The sixth and the last kind of data that I kind of deal with are the physical files or box of files. I have majorly two kinds of files: the calibration samples and my actual sample files. So we have designated lab refrigerators for these two kinds of samples. The calibration solutions are more pure and more contaminant free, and we like to keep them separate from the actual sample solutions. I have a designated space separately for my samples. All the GC samples which are tucked away in those boxes which have been run or are going to get run. The shelf is for storing the vials which are currently under process, and then the lowest section of the refrigerator is for storing all my loaded samplers, which are basically the prepared passive samplers that I use for my experiments. So you must have noticed the changing lighting situation here, and that's because I had to run to the lab to check on my samples, make a trip to Home Depot to get few stuffs for my project, and by the time I sit down it's already getting dark. Coming to the common problems that we face while organizing, and there were a couple of very interesting things that came up in the support group discussion, I guess. One of those things is shifting from one job to the next. I like to work on one thing in one day. Sometimes I would do 2 tasks in one day, maybe write a little bit of paper and then go and do some job in the lab like I did today. I prioritize the things that I have to get done in the morning section, things that do not take so much attention towards the afternoon, because that's when my attention span is very low, unfortunately. I let my body and mind decide which particular task I want to work on and when. Similarly, I sort of try to do all the important stuff towards the beginning of the week, Mondays, Tuesdays, and sort of do all the less attention seeking things like replying to emails, doing admin stuff, writing something for somebody towards the end of the week when I'm more tired from the week, I guess. The second thing is over detailing and time management. For me, the changing course of my projects have played a very important role because I initially started working on 2 different projects, and right now they seem to have been merging together. So organizing that, sometimes I get lost into organizing and I'll spend a day just organizing, and then I'll be like tired and I'm like, okay, I'm actually not going to work today. That happens a lot, and I think most of us agreed on the group that that happens to many of us. So definitely you're not alone if that happens to you. You always have to optimize the amount of planning you do, and you have to leave some energy in you to actually do the job after that. The third and interesting thing is we will always have an organized chaos. I have often worked on something, left it somewhere, and then moved on to something completely different the other day, and then I have completely forgotten that I had already worked on something before, and then I already started again working on the same thing before, and then I realized that okay, there are 2 versions of this, which one do I work with? So these things always happen when you have too many things on your plate and you come up with an organized chaos, I guess. So the best way to think about it is, no matter how much you organize, no matter how much you plan, there is always going to be some messy bits and some little bit of chaos, which is nothing but the marginal error percentage of being a human, and that's totally fine. You shouldn't be too hard on yourself. Everybody's way of doing things are different. You might function very well organizing less than a person who has to organize every step of his or hers things to do, and that is completely fine. You just have to come up with something that works best for you. At the end of the day, I guess tools are helpful, but they are merely tools. It's your body that does the work. It's your body and your mind that does the work. So it's very important that you take care of them. You just have to optimize between the amount of energy that you want to spend on organizing and actually getting your work done. And in the process, it's very important to listen to your body and your mind. Feel free to let me know how you organize your life. What are the problems you face on a day-to-day basis? And if you want to join the support group, I'll keep you posted on my Instagram handle, which should be linked in the description below. And you have a wonderful week ahead of you, and I'll see you in the next one.